Alright, what's happening, y'all? The official draft grade review, analysis of each player, breakdown of each player is officially here. It took forever. It took me longer to do the undrafted free agents than I thought, but we're here now. Just to give you a heads up, I'm breaking down each draft pick and each undrafted free agent. I'm breaking down strengths, weaknesses. I'm going to give a ceiling rating and explain why. I'm going to give a floor rating and explain why, both of which are out of 5. And then I'm going to give a 2020 projection, like whether or not they'll make the team, how good they might be, stuff like that. And I tried my very best to keep this as brief as possible. I'm going to try to run through this, but it may end up being an hour. I'm not exactly sure. We'll see at the end of it. But this is just old Rico, past Rico, trying to predict how long this video will be before I even record it. This is the intro. I have all of my notes ready, all of my graphics and illustrations ready. About to dive into it. So I know a lot of y'all have been waiting on this, so let's go ahead and get to it. I'm gonna give my official grade for the entire draft class at the end of the video and explain why. But for now, we're about to just go through each pick and each player and break each one of them down. And like I said, this is gonna be more of like a quick run through, a summary of everything that I'm talking about for each player. It's not gonna be as deep and as specific as my film sessions are going to be for each player that I do. Each player is going to get an individual 20 to 30 minute film session showing their strengths and weaknesses and all of that. I'm going to be rewinding and pausing, all of that type of stuff. This is more of a just telling y'all what they're good at, what they're bad at, and just flying through it type of thing. And like I said, I tried to summarize. This may go longer than I expect, but we'll see. So let's get it. For those of y'all who may not know the rookie class, round 1, pick 2nd overall, we chose defensive end Chase Young. In round 3, we chose running back Antonio Gibson. In round 4, we chose tackle Saahdiq Charles. In round 4, we also chose wide receiver Antonio Gandy-Golden. In round 5, we chose center Keith Ismael. In round 5, we also chose linebacker safety hybrid Khaleke Hudson. In round 7, we chose safety cornerback hybrid Kamren Curl. And also in round 7, we chose defensive end James Smith-Williams. And then our undrafted free agents include tight end Thaddeus Moss, who I'm very excited about, quarterback Steven Montez, wide receiver Isaiah Wright, who I'm also very excited about, wide receiver Jonathan Johnson, and defensive lineman David Bada from Germany. First up, Chase Young. Alright, so first of all, for Chase Young, his strengths include literally everything you want in an edge rusher. I mean, he's a dream scenario of a prospect. To start, his natural size and athleticism are almost unmatched. We thought Montez Sweat was an athletic freak in last year's draft. Then here comes Chase Young. He's able to beat tackles and get to the quarterback just from natural burst and elite ball get off. And snap timing, elite speed, elite bend, and a great speed to power ability. But then on top of that, his technique is pretty advanced for an edge rusher coming out of college. He has a lot of moves, counters, combos, all of that. But he just doesn't use them as consistently as you would hope. But you see him use just about every move in the book on film, just not often enough. He's an unfair matchup to block against on obvious passing downs. He also has some unteachable knack to strip the ball out of quarterbacks' hands even if he isn't able to bring the quarterback down. He's a strip sack master. And he's just an overall pass rush master. And not even more technique because he's shown a lot, but specifically more consistent technique is going to turn him into arguably the best pass rusher to ever do it. I mean, that's how high his potential is. Bruce Smith offered his services to help coach up and develop Chase Young as soon as possible so he can be an all-pro tackle for us right out the gate. And I really hope Dan Snyder makes that happen. I don't know what we're waiting on, honestly. Also, with how great Chase Young is at rushing the passer, you would think he wouldn't be a great edge setter and disruptive force against the run, but he's also that. He has the strength to set the edge and squeeze gaps, and also he has the IQ to diagnose the play as a run or pass, and then if it's a run, figure out where the ball carrier is going, and then has the strength, technique, and natural athleticism to go make the play. Whether it's his quickness or shedding a block to get past a blocker, he's gonna make a run stop. He's literally everything you can ask for in an edge rusher. He is deadly on every down, not even just on 3rd and longs. But that's where he's most dangerous, of course. When it's obvious passing downs, and he can just pin his ears back and target acquired to the quarterback and go lock on missile him, he's unstoppable. And on top of that, he's also very versatile. Not only is he unusually good in coverage with his elite athletic ability, smooth hips, great change of direction, and elite acceleration, but he was also used everywhere in Ohio State. That was like in the box, really. Like no hands in the dirt, standing straight up where the middle linebacker would be, and then just rushing straight on into the quarterback from there. Kind of like a blitzing Mike. Jack Del Rio will be able to throw Chase Young pretty much anywhere in the box. But again, I just want him as the 4-3 defensive end coming from the weak side of the offense, attacking from the quarterback's blind spots as much as possible. Lastly, he's as healthy as a player can be. Zero injury history. That's one of the things I love the most about him. Dependability is the best ability, and he is that also, on top of everything else. Now his weaknesses is pretty nitpicky, but mainly he needs to be more consistent with his hand technique as far as his attack plan, combinations, and counter moves. He shows plenty of great technique from time to time, but he just doesn't use it as much and as often as he should. But it's probably because he's just so used to beating people just because he's more athletic than them that he just never really felt the need to consistently. But at the NFL level, he's definitely going to have to use his technique more consistently. Also, to be nitpicky, he needs to keep his pad level lower more consistently because he's more athletic than everybody blocking him. And he has a tendency to rely on his speed, strength, or hand technique to win his battles. But if he just utilized leverage more often, he would be virtually unblockable by anybody in the NFL. Also, to be more nitpicky, he tends to get flat-footed in coverage, but I hope he's not asked to drop back in coverage like ever. He's great at pass rushing, and to be sending him back, unless it's an extremely rare occasion, just to catch an offense off guard is pointless. He may get a couple of interceptions a season, because defenses just won't expect him to drop back in coverage. But I want him hands in the dirt, running straight to the quarterback as soon as the ball is snapped as much as possible. And for his ceiling rating, easy, 5 out of 5. Hall of Famer potential. Many Pro Bowls, many All-Pros into his future. I'm expecting Defensive Rookie of the Year. He may even win Defensive Player of the Year right out the gate. I mean, his potential is that crazy. If he's able to consistently utilize the best leverage possible and to consistently use technique more, it's over with. There's nobody that can guard him. You can double team him all you want, but then Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Matt Ioannidis are all going to eat. It's not even fair. So you can't double team him, and him one-on-one with all of those traits is just not fair. And then my floor rating, 4.5 out of 5. A couple of Pro Bowls are just very good. I mean, because right out the gate, with his clean injury history, most importantly, right out the gate, without him getting any better in any way, he's still going to be a very good edge rusher. Like Ryan Kerrigan level. Out the gate, without any progression, without getting coached up at all. I mean, day one, we should expect at least Ryan Kerrigan. So that's why I gave him a 4.5 out of 5 floor rating. And then my 2020 projection, best player on the Redskins defense. I mean, if Reuben Foster's healthy, it's a nice argument between the two. I still lean towards Chase Young, but that's how great he is. This defense is already very talented. He's going to come in day one and be the best player on it. Quite possibly, he could be the NFL Defensive Player of the Year also. Best edge rusher on the team easily. He's going to make everybody around him better. You can't double team anybody because you got to worry about Chase Young. I mean, Chase Young is going to be the guy that offensive coordinators game plan towards the entire week before. I mean, you have Montez Sweat. You have a great linebacker group. You have great interior defensive linemen, and they're going to game plan towards them, but Chase Young is whose name is getting circled in meetings, in film sessions, the entire week before we play those teams, which is going to make everybody else's jobs easier. And I also can see him seemingly carry us to a couple of wins this season, like where he just takes over a game. We just need a stop. We need a sack. We have like a 2-point lead. The other team has the ball, running their 2-minute offense, and Chase Young goes and gets a strip sack to seal us the game. I can see that happening a couple of times this season, and many times in his career. I'm so excited to see what Chase Young is going to bring to this defense and this team overall. And then you have Antonio Gibson. Strengths. First of all, he's from Atlanta, so that's a big strength right there. But after that, he's as versatile as they come on offense. At the very best, he's going to be our best returner since maybe Santana Moss or even as far back as B. Mitt. I'm expecting him to be a more deadly and consistent returner than even Steven Sims was last season. So at the very least, we drafted our deadly home run return game specialist of the future. one that we've been waiting on for many years. But also running back wise, which is what he'll be used as the most, more of like a third down back Chris Thompson type, he has a lot of potential there. His very small sample size of running snaps show that he somehow has great vision. I don't know how from the limited amount of reps he has there. His quickness, agility, burst, acceleration, and home run speed make him a deadly weapon in the backfield. And he is prone to taking it to the house literally every play. And like I just mentioned, he's not just freakish athleticism. He also has great vision in the very small sample size we have from him running the ball on film. And along with him being very electric, he is also very hard to bring down with his above average size for a running back. And crazy contact balance, very Alvin Kamara-like. But even bigger. Gibson is like 2 inches taller and 5 pounds heavier than Alvin Kamara, but somehow faster. But just like Alvin Kamara, he has the ability to eat contact and somehow stay on his feet and keep moving. Arm tackles just don't work. And then receiving wise, that's the position he played the most in college. It's still a small sample size, but it's nowhere near as small as his running back sample size. But receiving wise, his running back and return game skill set and his pretty good hands make him a deadly receiving option. His potential in this area is crazy. He will primarily be a running back in this system by name, but just like Christian McCaffrey, or even more versatile than that, honestly, Gibson will be used everywhere. As the second running back on the field, as the slot receiver, as the primary target for screens, reverses, sweeps, and all kinds of other trick plays and ways to manufacture targets for your most explosive playmakers. They may even throw in a little bit of wildcat like he did in college. I mean, he's just one of those guys, just make sure he has the ball in his hands and let him work. He's going to make something of it. I feel like Gibson will cause even Steven Sims to become a pure slot receiver. No more returning, way less creative trick plays like reverses and screens for Steven Sims. Now Steven Sims will be able to focus his attention, all of it, to being the best slot receiver he can be. Antonio Gibson will be that versatile chess piece where defenses won't be able to guess what we're doing on offense at all. Every play will be ambiguous and hard to read. Antonio Gibson will allow the Redskins offense to give opposing defenses headaches week in and week out. Lastly, he is also a very healthy player with no health concerns, just like Chase Young, which is very big. I'm very big on players that are not injury prone, and Chase Young and Antonio Gibson both have as clean of an injury history as possible. And then weaknesses. The other side of the coin of being a versatile player is being a positionless player. Also, his route running is underdeveloped. The potential is there, but with him being so raw, his route running isn't as crisp, nuanced, and versatile as it needs to be for me or anybody in the NFL to take him seriously in the slot day one and consistently. And speaking of being raw, that's at the center of all of his weaknesses right now. He's freakishly athletic with infinite potential, but very raw in various areas. There is both the possibility that he can be great at everything, or he can be pedestrian at everything and end up relying on just his pure speed and quickness for him to be productive. His stats tell it all. His 11.2 yards per carry and 19.3 yards per reception show his immense potential, but the lack of production in his total of 735 yards receiving and only 369 yards rushing also represent how raw he is. Two sides of one coin. Very versatile or positionless. His ceiling rating, I gave him a 5 out of 5. Faster Christian McCaffrey, literally. CMC ran a 4.48 40-yard dash, while Antonio Gibson, while taller, ran a 4.39. That tells you everything you need to know about his ceiling. Christian McCaffrey, but faster. Like an entire .09 faster. He found the end zone 14 times and 77 career touches, which is an elite chance of scoring a touchdown of every 5.5 times he's touched the ball. That is ridiculous if it even translates somewhat at the NFL level. I mean, his ceiling is sky high. And then his floor rating, 3 out of 5. At the very least, he's going to be a great returner. He's very healthy. He's a faster, more durable Chris Thompson, who we all love. At the very least, he's going to be a great third down back replacement, even if he doesn't improve his route running. His vision is already there. He's very fast, very quick, can make people miss in space, and his contact balance is just something you can't teach. You just have it or you don't. Alvin Kamara probably has it the best in the league, and Antonio Gibson is very comparable to that, but even faster, so it's really not fair. My 2020 projection, to go somewhere in the middle between his ceiling and floor. I don't expect him to develop into his 5 out of 5 ceiling just yet, which is basically Pro Bowl, All-Pro level, but I am expecting Gibson to be, at the very least, Chris Thompson as a replacement on third down, and one of the best returners in the league, the best returner on our special teams unit between him and Isaiah Wright. And I'm expecting him to have some very exciting highlights in 2020. He has the potential to be Christian McCaffrey 2.0, but I'm just not banking on it, especially his rookie season. Especially with Scott Turner still trying to get the offense together. Everybody has to gain chemistry. The offensive line has to get right. All of that type of stuff. Stuff that's not even necessarily his fault. I mean, Scott Turner's still trying to figure everything out. But if there's any combination of coaches that can make him Christian McCaffrey 2.0, it's definitely this one. With CMC's former head coach of his entire career in Ron Rivera, and then his past offense designer, and then his offensive coordinator of the last 4 games of last season in 2019, and Scott Turner, which is his offensive coordinator here. If there's anybody that can turn him into Christian McCaffrey, is this coaching group who literally made Christian McCaffrey. Also, many neutral draft analysts from around the league say that Antonio Gibson has the potential to be the best skill position player in this entire draft, and we got him in the 3rd round, which is just insane. That's including all of the running backs like DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor, all of the receivers including CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, and Henry Ruggs. And that's before the draft even happened. But then he happened to go to a team full of coaches that developed Christian McCaffrey into the Christian McCaffrey we all know, which is just a beautiful blend of all of the stars aligning. And then to add to that, Mike Renner of Pro Football Focus worded it beautifully. Antonio Gibson broke 33 tackles on 77 career touches at Memphis and ran a 4.39 at the Combine. He could legitimately be the best running back in this class, but we just didn't get to see him. He is the most exciting draft pick of this class, in my opinion, as far as how good he may end up being, because we already know how great Chase Young is going to be. I mean, he's on his way to the Hall of Fame pretty much. But Antonio Gibson not only has the same type of infinite potential just on offense rather than defense, but he also has a large chance of being a bust, which results in him being the most exciting player to keep track of out of this draft class, in my opinion. The boom and bust range is pretty crazy. Next up, we have Saahdiq Charles. Strengths. Mobility is definitely his best trait by far. His smooth, quick, and active footwork gives him an elite ability to mirror edge rushers. He is also great in space because of ridiculous natural athleticism. He is great at the second level chasing down defensive backs and laying big hits on them. Most offensive linemen struggle with even just getting a hand on DBs at the next level because of their lack of mobility. But Saahdiq Charles doesn't struggle with this at all. I mean, he moves as smooth as somebody way smaller than his size, which makes him very versatile with his ability to pull, and is a great asset in faster, more spread-like offenses, where offensive linemen work out in space a lot. Also, one of the hardest things to coach up for offensive linemen is teaching them leverage and keeping their pads level low consistently. And it's just one of the things that it's like, if you have it, you have it. If you don't, you don't. In theory, it seems like something that would be easy to learn, like when you really think about it, but most offensive linemen who don't have great leverage skills never acquire it, or they're just not able to gain enough for them to be very effective blockers very consistently. Luckily for us, Saahdiq Charles already has this. That's the theme for this entire breakdown. He's naturally or already good at things that are hard to learn or gain, but he is raw or bad at areas that are easier to pick up, which I'll discuss, of course, soon. But luckily for us, the harder stuff to learn or gain, he's already good at, which is why his potential is so high. Also, he's got good enough reach to be a very effective tackle at the NFL level. Just needs to learn how to time his punches and engagements better, and also stop overextending. But his natural reach and blocking range is pretty good. His arms are short measurement wise, but you can't tell on film. And that's him going against the best of the best in the SEC and in the playoffs. Top tier talent, game in, game out. Also, he has great balance, but it's hard to tell because his lack of strength makes it look like he doesn't sometimes. And luckily for us, his football IQ is still a work in progress, and there are some areas of growth, but he's definitely not a project as far as IQ goes. He comes in day one as a very smart offensive lineman. There's just certain ways he can definitely improve. Weaknesses. Kind of a developmental project type of guy. Not ready day one per se. He was my 5th best tackle in this class, talent-wise, only after the 4 guys that went in the first round. And he's definitely better than the other 7 tackles who went before him, in my opinion. But he is not ready day one. He's not that type of guy, in my opinion, to be completely honest. Which especially sucks for this quarantine situation and teams possibly not having an off season with workouts like mini camp and training camp and stuff like that. But due to his naturally short arms, he tends to lunge at edge rushers and plays on his toes at times. He already has strength issues, so him playing on his toes puts him in positions of getting out-muscled easily at times. But speaking of strength, his biggest weakness is definitely his strength. Playing day one and performing well is pretty ugly because of his lack of strength. He has the build to gain strength easily, so I definitely don't consider him a Geron Christian clone at all. But I do worry about how him gaining muscle may affect his mobility, which is his bread and butter as of right now, but that's just a road we'll have to cross when we get there. And his second biggest weakness is his hand technique. His feet are great, like elite, but his hand technique needs improvement. He could easily mask a lot of his strength issues with the ability to punch with correct timing. He has a strong punch, which is very useful in run blocking, but sometimes he misfires and mistimes. He is already built to have consistent success in zone blocking schemes, but he is not ready to be an asset in power running schemes until he can get his hand technique right and his strength up, but mainly his hand technique. You can see the strong punch, which is weird because of his lack of strength, but his strength issues show when it comes to the sumo match part of blocking. But a strong punch is definitely there. Right off the snap, you can see defensive linemen get like a jolt ran through their body. He just needs to learn how to use it more consistently. And lastly, his anchor can be improved once he adds more mass and muscle. The difference between Saahdiq Charles and Geron Christian is that Saahdiq is clearly more likely to be able to add muscle and gain strength. With Geron Christian, it's like, I hope he adds more muscle. With Saahdiq, it's more of an expectation. It's just a matter of when. And the likelihood of him being a Pro Bowl tackle, I believe he can be by week one, is very slim because of his lack of strength. But I definitely believe he can be a Pro Bowl level tackle talent. Now his ceiling, 4.5 out of 5. He has the potential to be a franchise cornerstone left tackle to build our offense around. He could very possibly replace what we lost in Trent Williams. With his great physical tools, other than natural arm length, his elite athleticism and mobility, and his frame that definitely have room to add the necessary muscle, have his potential sky high. But Trent Williams' level is a little bit of a stretch, honestly, because people like Trent Williams don't come around often at all, honestly, which is why I can't give him a 5 out of 5 potential. But he is definitely the next tier right below that. Very talented with room to grow. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being better than one or two of the top 4 offensive linemen that were drafted in this draft all in the first round. And if he somehow improves on all of his weaknesses, we'll have a Pro Bowl left tackle to protect Dwayne Haskins for years to come. He's that great, potential-wise. And then his floor rating, 3 out of 5. Because at the very least, we'll get a talented left tackle that will lose some of his battles due to his lack of strength, but he will never be as bad as Geron Christian has been for us so far. Geron Christian's lack of strength is a huge detriment to his overall game. Saahdiq Charles' lack of strength will only be a detriment to his consistency. His lack of strength doesn't just get him beat on every play like Geron Christian on most plays. It's just that strength would help him be a far more consistent offensive lineman. So at the very least, he'll be better than anything we've ever gotten from Geron Christian and probably ever will, even though that isn't really saying much. 2020 projection, day one, week one, especially with how coronavirus chaos is limiting our off-season workout opportunities, I'm not expecting him to be a dependable tackle just yet. He will be good enough to start, but he may occasionally get Dwayne Haskins killed out there. I'm not going to lie to you. But at some point in this season, this 2020 season, his rookie season, when he fully develops, which I'm expecting him to prove to be one of the 5 best offensive tackles of this draft class like I feel he is. Maybe even better. Hopefully, his natural talent in different areas can carry him while he improves on technique and strength. But right out the gate, we have a pretty good tackle, but he has the potential to make us not even miss Trent Williams. Not saying he's Trent Williams, because who else is, but he's definitely that level of talent, potential-wise. Then you have Antonio Gandy-Golden. His strengths, size and length. That simple. Most of his strengths come from him just being bigger than everybody covering him. And not just a little bigger, but way bigger. Like Kelvin Harmon looks bigger than everybody covering him, and he's 6'2". Antonio Gandy-Golden is 6'4", 223 pounds. And he even has slightly bigger hands than contested catch monster CeeDee Lamb. So his contested catch ability is crazy just off of the fact that his hands are so big. He wins his battles because he's taller, bigger, longer, and has better hands than the people covering him. His jump ball ability is an obvious advantage. His contested catch ability is also an obvious advantage. So of course he is a deadly red zone option, something Dwayne Haskins never really had last season. Terry McLaurin and Steven Sims were killing DBs those first 80 yards, and even sometimes in the red zone. But now with AGG, Haskins will have somebody he can consistently throw it up to, and it's either a touchdown or a pass interference and a fresh first and goal. But even beyond just being big and great in traffic, he also has an underrated release off the line of scrimmage against press man coverage, which makes him a complete wide receiver and not just some big red zone target, a possession receiver. He has shown he has the tools to beat press coverage all over his tape. So when defenses start to run more press coverage like they typically do in the red zone, Antonio Gandy-Golden will be able to beat that also and get open enough to where he doesn't even have to use his size to win. He'll have separation. And taking it back a little, he also has great hands. His 2018 hands were terrible, and I don't know what happened over the summer in 2019, but he came back a totally different guy hands-wise and release-wise. He not only has consistent hands, but he also has the natural knack for plucking the ball out of the air very quickly before defenders can even have a chance to knock it out of his hands. Also, even with how big he is, he's not only able to break tackles like crazy after the catch, but he also has the shiftiness to elude tackles in open space, which is really weird. It's crazy to even see that from somebody his height and size. And one thing that receivers tend to not have, even at the NFL level, is the ability to consistently track the ball down quickly enough to be able to adjust your route pattern accordingly. He has that. He can be running with his back to the ball, looking up, and he can track the ball down perfectly, knowing exactly where it's going. He just has a knack for that. He also has deceptive speed when running past safeties. He's not a great deep ball threat per se, but he definitely has the speed to take the lid off of defenses occasionally and catch defenses off guard who will only game plan for him to work in short to medium range. Don't spam him running deep routes, but definitely utilize his ability to blow past safeties and corners once he builds up his stride. He definitely has the speed to run past people, especially if they're not game planning for it or expecting it. Now his weaknesses, first of all, his route running is a little underdeveloped, so his inability to separate consistently will slow down his production until he can separate consistently and become a dependable target for a young quarterback in Dwayne Haskins. Because as of today, if the Redskins had a game today, Haskins would have to throw really good, accurate passes over defenders' heads and allow AGG to just go up and get it. But once he can consistently allow Dwayne Haskins to throw easy passes to him after he gets open, he will truly set up as the next best option after Terry McLaurin for Dwayne Haskins. He can separate downfield with his build-up speed, and he can separate off the line of scrimmage with his nice release on press coverage, but separating horizontally, more specifically on a consistent basis, is currently a struggle for him. He also has a slow acceleration, but if he can learn to run more crisp, nuanced routes, along with his already good release, he should be able to separate against the best of them anyway, which leads me to his ceiling, 4.5 out of 5. If he can learn a more diverse route tree and learn how to run better routes with his combination of size, great hands, and deceptive speed, he can easily be a corner's worst nightmare. You can't teach size, and you definitely can't teach size with that unexpected speed that he has. He only ran a 4.6 at the combine, which is why he lasted to the 4th round, but he's definitely faster than that on tape. Definitely don't get that confused. And he can literally do everything Josh Doctson was expected to do, but couldn't, and possibly even more. We got a real star in Antonio Gandy-Golden, in my opinion. And then his floor rating, 2.5 out of 5. Because I mean, day one, with his rare blend of size, hands, concentration, ability to separate deep downfield, ability to beat press man coverage with a smooth and quick release, and dependable blocking, will at least make him a great red zone threat day one. Week one, he should be a guy that doesn't get a lot of yards or targets per game just because of his inability to separate consistently, but he should definitely get a touchdown here and there quite often. Not only from being able to win fade routes in the back of the end zone, but also from his ability to beat people deep, and also his ability to create yards after the catch. Even if he somehow doesn't become a better route runner, which I doubt, there's room to grow. He's shown progression over his years in college, which is something really big. When you show that you can get better year by year, that just helps us project you to get even better at the NFL level. So I'm expecting his route running to get better, but even if it doesn't, somehow, he's still going to be a way better version of the Josh Doctson that we ended up getting. Taller, better, more consistent hands at the very least. And then my 2020 projection, I think he will surprise a lot of people around the league and help play a major role in this young, very talented receiving core that's actually going to earn respect around the league and put up big numbers and have analysts and football heads from all around the country debating whether or not this receiving core is the next big thing. I can definitely see that happening. And AGG will be a big part of that. People from Bleacher Report, NFL Network, ESPN, and from all of those different neutral networks are already very high on him and feel like he was the steal of the draft. But I feel like he can prove the guys who didn't feel that way wrong and make everybody a believer. With the people around him like Haskins being primed for a breakout year, Terry McLaurin being Terry McLaurin, Steven Sims looking goated those last 2 games of the season. AGG should only be facing the second or third best corner of every defense we go against. And he has the talent to eat against number 1s, but he'll be facing the number 2s or 3s, so I'm expecting big things from him even in his rookie season. He's going to be a matchup nightmare. Teams are going to hate us for that one. Next, we have Keith Ismael. His strongest traits are his mobility and IQ. With how mobile Saahdiq Charles and Keith Ismael are, I can already tell this offense will be very fast-paced and everybody will be out in space, creating mismatches and making people miss. This is going to be probably the most electric, flashy offense we've ever seen the Redskins run in our history. Trick plays, misdirections, spreading defenses out, creating all kinds of favorable matchups around the field. And players with Keith Ismael's mobility fit in beautifully. And on top of that, he has that versatility trait that Ron Rivera and Kyle Smith have clearly prioritized this recent draft and free agency. Most centers also have the ability to play both guard positions pretty well, but he is especially able to play both guard positions. But to break it down, his ball get off from the snap is almost instant, so he usually wins his battles before it even really starts for defenders. He is very mobile, as I mentioned before. He can move laterally so smoothly. He has smooth hips and great footwork. He can easily mirror athletic interior rushers. With his advanced mobility, he's really good at angling himself in the best way possible to block defenders in the direction that he wants them to go. And his mobility also allows him to be a great pull blocker. His good footwork also allows him to recover and reset in bad situations. And he also has a nice punch, and I also really like his IQ. He's always looking for somebody to block. He's very active. And then his weaknesses. His lack of strength and length will always limit his ceiling. While Saahdiq's lack of both affects his consistency, it seems like Keith always struggles with his natural body limitation on a snap-to-snap basis. It's a different level of lack of strength and length from Saahdiq Charles. It's a little bit worse. Even though he has a pretty strong punch, he has a weak anchor. That's why he can't seem to sustain blocks long, except for whenever he's able to use his mobility to re-angle himself and reset the battle. And his ceiling, I give it a 4 out of 5. Because in a fast-paced offense with more 3-step drops than 7-step drops, he will be very effective with his great mobility and really great snap to ball get off, where he will only have to block for a short amount of time anyway before it becomes a sumo match. His mobility is rare and cannot be taught. So he has the more rare trait, and if he somehow finds a way to get stronger, he can end up being really good, like the center of the future for this franchise. And then his floor rating, 1 out of 5, because in a passing offense that uses more 7-step drops, which would mostly be Scott Turner's fault for doing that to him, but in an offense that uses more 7-step drops that will force him to block for longer periods of time, his lack of strength and length and ability to hold blocks will get exposed more consistently. If the offense that chose to draft him doesn't run an offense that suits his weaknesses and strengths the best, then he won't be dependable at all. We can't expect him to be the consistent pass protector for 7-step drops. We just can't. You can ask him to do it occasionally, but not often at all, or he just won't make it in this league at all. It'll make him look really bad even though he has a lot of potential. In my 2020 projection, I feel like even if he never finds a way to get noticeably stronger, as long as the offense runs quick plays, which is what Haskins likes and which he's the most productive in, so this fits him well, then he should at least be a starting caliber depth piece. We'll have him on the bench, but he'll definitely have starting caliber talent. He could easily turn the center position into a position battle between him and Chase. He may not be destined for Pro Bowls like Saahdiq Charles is, potential-wise, but he'll definitely be a solid center. It can definitely be the starting center in a top 5 offense, in a top 5 offensive line in the NFL. We've needed depth on our offensive line for years now, and I'm happy to see that between him, Cornelius Lucas, Wes Martin, and Ross Pischbacher, and some others, we finally have starting caliber offensive linemen as depth players, like we really needed back in 2017 before Alex Smith got hurt. Even though Wes Martin, I'm expecting him to start at left guard, but you know what I'm saying. We finally have a lot of talent, not just in the starting group, but deeper in the depth chart, offensive line wise. And Pro Football Focus loves Keith Ismael. They graded him the best pass blocker in all of college football in 2019. And the 11th best run blocker. That's extremely high praise. I don't see that on film personally, but I definitely see the potential that they're going at. But I don't feel like he was literally the best offensive lineman to do it last year in college. But he will immediately make our offensive line more athletic and versatile day one. And I definitely expect him to make this roster. Next up, you have Khaleke Hudson. Strengths, versatile. Common theme from Ron Rivera and Kyle Smith's first offseason as a duo. And this guy is one of those guys that personifies this initiative. Jeremy Chin was the great value Isaiah Simmons in the draft, and at first I believe Khaleke was the great value Jeremy Chin, with very similar strengths and weaknesses, the main one being versatility, of course. But after doing more film study on him and really diving into his tape, he is actually a closer comp to a great value Derwin James. Khaleke had plenty of experience in many positions. He played 52 snaps at free safety, 20 snaps at outside corner, 210 snaps at nickel corner, 200 snaps on the D-line, and 371 snaps in the box, which is where he makes his bread and butter, in the box. That's both corner spots, both safety spots, inside linebacker, and edge rusher. And he almost evenly split his snaps amongst them all, which is crazy. That is crazy experience and versatility. Also, he is a very tough, scrappy guy that's always on 100, giving his all to make a play every play. He also has some pretty good instincts to diagnose run plays and their direction so that he's able to beat blockers to the spot. He is also a very aware and quick gap filler. He also has pretty good change of direction skills, which is very useful. And what will immediately impact the Redskins is that he has all of the tools necessary to block punts. Crazy burst out of his stance, and then great tracking speed to the punter. The stats don't lie. He had 5 blocked punts in his career in college. And production like that definitely can translate to the NFL level. But to break it down per position, at corner, he's pretty decent to good in coverage. As an edge rusher, he's actually pretty good as long as he has the outside shoulder and is not covered. As long as he's the furthest on the edge and doesn't have to fight through traffic. And as a safety and a linebacker in the box, he is quick to diagnose run plays and disrupt them. Now, his weaknesses. The main thing that makes him not like Derwin James or Jeremy Chin or Isaiah Simmons is his lack of athleticism. He's not sluggish at all, but he's also not an elite athlete like these guys that are just built different. Khaleke Hudson is not built different. He's a pretty average athlete, honestly. And that is by far the biggest thing holding him back from being just great. Also, he isn't great at either position. He's pretty good. Like at safety, he's decent in coverage, but his average speed makes him a liability at free safety. And his inability to shed blocks consistently and work well in traffic holds him back from being great in the box. And as a corner, his twitchy change of direction skills allow him to make plays in zone coverage, but his lack of elite speed and lack of length and below average route recognition makes him a liability in man coverage. So he's definitely better suited for zone coverage. And then an edge rusher, he's undersized for the position clearly. So he doesn't win consistently to be a full-time edge rusher at all, of course. So it's nice to have the experience and versatility of playing edge rusher and corner because it helps him play the other positions that he's better built for better. But he's definitely more of a safety linebacker hybrid type. An edge rusher and cornerback just shouldn't be positions he's playing at the NFL level. But the fact that he has experience in those areas helps him play safety and linebacker better, is what I'm basically saying. And then his ceiling rating, I give it a 3.5 out of 5. His versatility screams high ceiling because logically you think if he can somehow master all of those positions he plays, he can be dominant and one of the best players on his defense. But I feel like he will be more of a jack of all trades and a master of none kind of guy because of his lack of athleticism. His experience in all of those different positions on defense can lead to him being very useful if he finds some way to become faster and quicker somehow. Also, if he gets his coverage IQ up, he could actually be a useful weapon in coverage. But he's definitely going to be a scheme-dependent guy. It's going to be up to Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera to put him in the best positions to succeed. He can't just go out there and do everything like Isaiah Simmons. I mean, Isaiah Simmons, he's going to be relatively scheme-dependent, but at the end of the day, he's so athletic and so great at so many different things. No matter how dumb defensive coordinator can be, he's still going to go out there and have an impact. Khaleke Hudson is not like that at all. Now his floor rating, I give it a 2 out of 5, because at the very least, he will be a deadly asset in special teams. Even if he isn't able to become better at any of those many positions that he plays on defense, he will step in and be an instant impact player on special teams. Even if he's just a jack of all trades, or even worse than that at the NFL level, he will still be a secret weapon on special teams. But I feel like he will get at least somewhat better at being a safety linebacker hybrid. But his success at the NFL level will definitely depend on how his defensive coordinator utilizes his talents and puts him in the best positions and situations possible. If not, whoo boy. Now his 2020 projection. He's gonna make the team just from his special teams potential alone. Ron Rivera already said, quote, he's very athletic, which I don't exactly agree with, but whatever. He's gonna be a special teams ace for us, which I do agree with. So at the very least, with that high praise from the head honcho himself, you could definitely expect him to make the team and be an early instant impact player on special teams. And then that will allow him to hold a roster spot until he can develop into an impact player on defense in certain packages that favor versatile players to confuse offenses. If there's any coaches that can develop him and find a way to incorporate him into a defense correctly, it's definitely Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera. But immediately day one, at the very least, we're getting a guy that just for some reason just has a knack for blocking punts, and you just do not find that every day. I mean, you really just don't find that at all. I'm surprised that teams didn't draft him sooner in the draft just for that, because that's a very specific skill set that's just elite. Like, I'm surprised the Patriots, the way Bill Belichick runs his team, he finds guys that are really good at one or two things and make sure they only do those one or two things. And Khaleke Hudson is the definition of that, with the potential to be great at other things. I mean, he's literally a Bill Belichick type of guy. So I don't know how we ended up getting him when we got him. I'm very excited about Khaleke Hudson's potential. I just wish he was more athletic, man. Then you have Kamren Curl. Strengths: with his great tackling, his rare toughness and aggression, his lack of fear for big contact, and his decent burst, he could definitely be a pretty productive box safety. Also, he has a lot of experience playing corner. Even though he's best suited at safety, he played 195 snaps at free safety, 185 snaps in the box, and 293 snaps at slot corner. So even though he is projected best to be a safety at the NFL level, most of his snaps came in slot corner, which brings some good coverage skills to his safety ability that pure safeties usually don't have. But he is definitely more of a safety. He's a good tackler, a good block shedder, and he has some pretty good coverage skills, especially in short to intermediate range, where he doesn't have to cover as much space and can use his length to disrupt plays. His length also allows him to have some pretty good ball skills, so he's able to attack the ball and bat it down better than a lot of people usually are. And he's able to attack the ball specifically better and not just attack receivers, which is something you definitely prefer, somebody that can reach the ball and bat it down, and not just try to hurry up and hit receivers and make them drop the ball themselves. That's definitely a unique skill that's hard to teach. You can't teach length. Now, weaknesses. He has tight hips, so double moves can get him. He isn't a notable athlete and lacks the acceleration, recovery speed, footwork, and burst necessary to cover receivers for long periods of time, like you would hope an NFL corner could do, which is one of the main reasons why he's best suited as safety, unless he's covering tight ends, which he can actually do pretty well. He doesn't have the traits to consistently cover speedy slot receivers well, which is what he did a lot in coverage for some reason. Also, even though he is a very aggressive and willing banger in the box, he doesn't have the size, muscle, and mass necessary to win consistently in the box, even with his good block shedding. His lack of speed also limits his range as a free safety, so I would definitely prefer him as a strong safety in the box, or split in deep coverage roles with at least one other player with him, like quarters, where he splits up the deep safety responsibilities. He is not a single high safety type of guy at all. He doesn't have the range for that at all. But he can play deep in quarters coverage and stuff like that if we need him to. Like prevent defense, all of that type of stuff. He would be great to bring in. His ceiling rating, I gave it a 3.5, just like Khaleke, because their lack of great athleticism will limit his ceiling in every area. Just like Khaleke, his vast experience with playing multiple positions gives him an edge to his game that most players don't have. Him playing in the box a lot improves his ability to play corner. His ability to cover deep in some sort of free safety role helps his ability to play in the box. Each position he plays enhances the skills for his other positions. They complement each other. The only problem is, well, really the main problem is that he's not a great athlete, just like Khaleke. But his unique experience with splitting snaps almost dead evenly across 3 different positions makes him a very nice chess piece asset if he can fully tap into all of those positions, rather than just being a jack of all trades and a master of none. And then his floor rating, I gave it a 1.5 out of 5. I would say his floor is similar to Khaleke's, but even though Kamren's special teams impact will be pretty good, I don't think he'll be as much of an impact player as Khaleke is in special teams. Because Khaleke and Kamren are good in special teams coverage, but Khaleke's knack for blocking punts gives him a huge edge over Kamren when I graded both of them. But like Khaleke, Kamren's floor is a strong special teams contributor, day one. He can't possibly be a 0 out of 5 with how much I'm expecting him to impact our special teams immediately, which will more than likely be the reason he makes the official roster right before the regular season starts anyway. But he does have some potential to get better. But at the very least, his floor is a 1.5 out of 5 because he'll be a good special teams player at the very least. Now my 2020 projection, football analyst Mike Renner compared him to Trey Boston, but I personally don't see it. Trey Boston has a lot of range, which is something Kamren doesn't have. Trey isn't a good tackler, which is something Kamren is. Trey doesn't do well in the box, but Kamren does. But I'm only mentioning this to say that if somehow he ends up being a Trey Boston clone, I would be ecstatic. I mean, I would flip tables. That's somebody I really wanted in free agency. But I just personally don't see that in his film. I feel like he's best suited as a box safety. He's probably the best backup to Landon Collins we have on this roster right now, especially potential-wise. And I can definitely see him utilizing his big size and length to cover tight ends. And if the Redskins can coach him up to be a smarter corner, then he can make up for his lack of athleticism with those instincts, IQ, and his length. His lack of athleticism shouldn't hurt him, but it will limit his potential. Now we have the last pick of the draft, and then we're moving on to undrafted free agents. You have James Smith-Williams. Strengths, first of all, he is very athletic. As a matter of fact, out of all of the edge rushers who participated at the 2019 Combine, Next Gen Stats rated him the second most athletic, only behind Jabari Zuniga. He had the best good rating, while Jabari was the only elite rating. Chase Young would have tested elite if he tested, would have more than likely been the most elite edge rusher prospect athleticism-wise at the Combine, but he didn't test. So back to James. Not only is he a great athlete, but he also has length that you cannot teach. And he uses it to his advantage consistently. He has length and he knows it. It is very tough for offensive linemen to even get hands on him. Also, along with that length, he has some good power at the point of attack to drop his anchor and set the edge well. He is also able to use his athleticism to transfer speed to power to blow up offensive linemen and get them off balance. Along with that power, he usually wins with good leverage and balance. And he also plays with a great motor that is consistently working and looking for a way to win. He is a big handful to deal with for offensive linemen, man. He is a headache. Athleticism, strength, and an infinite motor. But his weaknesses. Probably his biggest weakness is his durability. But other than that, even with his great length and ability to control fights at the line of scrimmage with his length, when offensive linemen do manage to get their hands on him, he struggles mightily to get them off of him. And he usually becomes a non-factor afterwards. So he's lacking strength, and also he's lacking the ideal IQ required to diagnose plays and react to them quickly enough to truly be disruptive. But this is more than likely because of his lack of experience due to his myriad of injuries that he suffered in college. But his lack of IQ and all of that is definitely coachable with time and reps. Also, he needs a lot of help with his technique, which is also coachable with time and reps. His hand usage, his rush plan, combos, counters, all of it. He needs help in every way. He needs a big coaching up in technique. He's used to winning battles just from natural talent, but his technique needs a lot of improvement if he expects to win consistently at the NFL level and make this roster. Now, his ceiling rating, I gave him a 3.5 out of 5. His great athleticism makes him a very interesting prospect, and with how versatile he is to be able to step down into an interior defensive line role occasionally if you really need him to, makes him a very interesting draft pick. Just like Antonio Gibson, he could have been widely known as one of the best players in this draft and we just saw him more. Gibson just didn't get the ball more for no justifiable reason, while James didn't get much film out there because of his extended injury history. But nevertheless, my point is, he is very talented and only survived till the 7th round because of his injury history. The talent is definitely there. Being able to play both edge rusher and defensive tackle makes him very unique and increases the chances of him not only making this roster, but actually ending up being great. But with his great athleticism, if he can actually stay healthy and actually improve in all aspects of his technique, he can actually end up being a serious problem and very likely winning that 4th or maybe even 5th edge rusher spot on the final roster. If we end up having 5 of them, it's automatically Chase Young, Montez Sweat, and Ryan Kerrigan, and then there's Nate Orchard, Jordan Burford, and James competing for the last 1 or 2 spots. And then his floor rating, 0.5 out of 5, mostly because of injuries. He sustains season-ending injuries in both 2015 and 2016, back-to-back years, and he only played in 7 games in 2019. He can just simply end up never working out because he just can't stay on the field. And with him being a big 260-pound edge rusher, even with his great athleticism and length, his chances of being a great special teams player is slim to none. So that is also where he gets this floor rating points deducted from. He can't contribute on special teams like Khaleke and Kamren Curl can. Khaleke and Kamren Curl at the very least will be strong special teams contributors. James is not the same case at all. It's either stay healthy and work out on defense or he just doesn't make the team. Now his 2020 projection. He performed a miracle by going from 196 pounds as a freshman to 260 pounds entering the draft. So who knows what other miracles this man may be able to perform. But his versatility will definitely help his case for making the final roster just before the regular season. His athleticism definitely gives Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio a great piece of clay to mold, but they have a lot to work to do to get his technique to where it needs to be for him to be successful at the NFL level. And even though he is athletic, his hips are pretty tight, and he struggles bending and turning corners very well. And that may hurt his chances of making the team. But with a large improvement in technique across the board and some increased strength and some durability, he will make a big case to make this team. But all of those things have to happen. Now on the drafted free agents, yes sir, and we start with my boy Thaddeus Moss. Strengths, great blocker. One of the best, if not the best, in this 2020 tight end draft class. He's a little undersized measurable wise, but it has never really mattered on film at all. He has been a consistently good to great blocker in the SEC. Against the best of the best, the toughest football conference in the nation, blocking against the best of the best as far as defensive linemen go and edge rushers. So thank goodness we'll finally have a dependable blocking tight end because we haven't had that. Jeremy Sprinkle's pretty good, but he's not as good as Thaddeus Moss is. And then on top of that, in my opinion, he had the best hands in this tight end class also. If it was thrown his way and his hands touched it, he caught it, plain and simple. He didn't have a single dropped catch this entire past season in 2019. Even if it was a contested catch over the sideline where he had to barely tiptoe both of his feet in bounds to barely make it, he caught it. And you can tell Randy Moss is his daddy because in college, you only need 1 foot in bounds for it to count as a catch. And we even see good receivers coming out of college with all kinds of 1 foot taps all over their film. And then they just learn to get 2 feet in bounds once they get to the NFL. But with how Thaddeus Moss does whatever it takes to get both feet in bounds, even at the college level, even though he only needs 1, it shows that his dad has definitely prepared him for the NFL since he was little. But then that leads me to his weaknesses. With Randy Moss being his dad, I'm surprised his route running isn't better. But then again, Randy Moss wasn't really known for his route running. He was never Jerry Rice. So I guess that's where that comes from. But also, he just isn't naturally fast or quick. He's just not one of those guys. And his route running, like I said, needs to be improved. He isn't a true separator. But with how many weapons the Redskins will have around him, he won't have to be. There's maybe only like 3 or 4 tight ends in the league that actually get open on their own. The rest of them are schemed open by their offensive coordinator, and that's including George Kittle. But nevertheless, his limited athleticism will always limit his potential. His lack of speed will make it difficult for him to separate against NFL level DBs and a lot of linebackers. But with how talented these other weapons are around him, he'll be consistently covered by the less talented cover guys on opposing defenses. So if he can improve his route running even just a little bit, he can probably beat those guys on his own consistently. But again, even if he isn't able to learn how to separate on his own, the offense will scheme him open. Also, his run after the catch ability is pretty much non-existent, which is what separates him from George Kittle. Like, there's a big gap in that department. George Kittle is probably the best yards after catch tight end in the league, and Thaddeus Moss isn't one at all. and more than likely never will, just because he's not really athletic. But his ceiling rating, I gave it a 4 out of 5. I doubt he'll just learn some extra speed or quickness, which stops it being a 5 out of 5. But if he's able to become a better, more complex, confident, and nuanced route runner, he will finally be that dual threat tight end we've been waiting for forever. I mean, I can't even remember the last time we had a true dual threat Travis Kelce type of guy. Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis were great in the passing game, but couldn't block to save their lives. Jordan Reed couldn't even manage to stay in the way of defenders, to stall them or something, nothing. And then we had Jeremy Sprinkle, who could block pretty well, but not great, and would also frustratingly drop both easy and difficult first down and touchdown catches. Poor Dwayne Haskins last season. Thaddeus Moss can bring both a good amount of the receiving threat that Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis did, mostly in the red zone, and on third downs, and also bring the dependable impact blocking that Jeremy Sprinkle did, but even more dependable and consistent. I mean, he literally sounds like the tight end of our dreams for what we need him to do. We don't need him to be out here juking DBs out their socks. We just need him to be a great red zone threat and a great blocker. That's literally two things we've been missing the past few years, and the things that Jay Gruden has been complaining about the past few years that he hasn't had. Thaddeus Moss is finally the answer. Now his floor, 3.5 out of 5. Second highest floor of this entire class, honestly. Because instead of injuries, there's no way he won't immediately make this team better by day one, like immediately. He is too dependable of a blocker. And is too dependable of a catcher. Literally didn't drop a pass last season. So for what the Redskins need him to do, which is block well consistently in the run game, and be able to catch even the difficult throws from Haskins and even the easy ones, which seems to be hard for some reason, because the Redskins haven't had the luxury of a tight end who could catch even easy passes recently, which is really sad, but it's true. I mean, Haskins would dodge 2 sacks, all in one play, scramble out of the pocket, make a nice throw on the run just for Jeremy Sprinkle to drop the pass for no reason. So at the very least, Thaddeus Moss is a better blocking, better catching Jeremy Sprinkle. He won't let us down like that. I mean, Jeremy Sprinkle was letting Nas down a few times last season. I'm not giving up on him, but Thaddeus Moss is definitely a huge upgrade. Now my 2020 projection, for what we need our tight ends to do, and I keep saying it, I keep preaching it, which is be dual threat, which doesn't signal what the offense is going to do with him in the game. He will be great and highly productive. He will take our offense to another level. He will be strongly appreciated by Scott Turner, Dwayne Haskins, and all of the running backs especially. Terry McLaurin, Steven Sims, AGG, and Kelvin Harmon will have defenses distracted and all over the place. So Thaddeus Moss doesn't need to be Jordan Reed level route runner and separator to have a big impact in the passing game. Just like how the Falcons schemed Austin Hooper open. The guy a lot of y'all wanted so bad in free agency. The Redskins can do the exact same, if not better, with Thaddeus Moss. Especially since Thaddeus Moss is a better version of Austin Hooper, with him being a better blocker and having better hands. The young, promising receiving core will dominate the first 80 yards and allow Thaddeus Moss to eat underneath. And then in the red zone, Thaddeus Moss will shine by boxing out DBs, making tough catches for Haskins as a big target with a large catch radius, and finally turn those first and goals that ended up being 3 points into 7s. McLaurin and Sims are great separators, but there's not much space for anybody, no matter how talented you are in the red zone. But Moss and AGG will be the big targets for Haskins in traffic and on fade routes to the back of the end zone. Can't wait. Also, expect Thaddeus Moss to possibly play a Chris Cooley-like role where he also comes in as a fullback occasionally, which is very interesting. For those of y'all who aren't huge Thaddeus Moss fans like me yet, when he gets fully healthy, y'all will become believers soon enough. Just watch. He'll immediately take this offense to another level just from the fact that defenses won't know what we're doing when he's simply on the field. When Reed or Vernon Davis were on the field, defenses knew we were more than likely throwing the ball, because if we ran it, it was going to be a disaster to the side that those guys were blocking on. And then when Sprinkle was on the field, back then, before he was thrown into the starting lineup due to injuries, defenses knew we were running the ball, so they would stack the box. Now with Thaddeus Moss, they will always be on their toes and guessing, and we will be able to take advantage of that game in and game out. And with his size and hands, he will help us convert third downs way more often and score touchdowns in the red zone way more often also. I'm not saying he's Travis Kelce or Antonio Gonzalez, because he's not a guy that can just separate on his own, at least yet. Maybe he will be if he learns better route running. But for what we need him to do, which I keep saying, blocking and be a red zone threat, which is two of our biggest weaknesses from last year's offense. He can do just that, improve our offense mightily immediately. Now we're on to Steven Montez, the quarterback. Strengths, very plain and simple. Basically the typical strengths and weaknesses of a big quarterback with all of the measurables that you desire. The guy that's athletic and more mobile than he's supposed to be at his size, that gets taken late in the draft or goes undrafted. I mean, he literally fits that profile. All of the physical tools are there. Strong arm, tough to bring down, durable, can take hits, all kinds of potential. But then there's also the typical weaknesses. Below average IQ and processing speed. Needs to improve on accuracy at all three levels some. Not a lot though, honestly, but definitely needs to improve his accuracy. He stares down receivers, which is a big no-no, which leads to interceptions because DBs know where he wants to throw the ball. I mean, he's literally showing them with his eyes and his body language. And then he also has a weird knack to throw pick sixes and not just normal interceptions. He threw 5 pick sixes, which is pretty crazy. He also has mechanics issues, of course, and that's mostly the reason why his accuracy is inconsistent. And he also throws medicine balls a lot, which is what I really have a problem of. I mean, even the great Peyton Manning did it, but this guy's really out here throwing medicine balls like a lot. He's out here throwing receivers into collisions and getting them killed out there. And he better not do that with my boy Scary Terry or the others, or he gonna have to see me about it. And then his ceiling rating, I'm gonna have to give it a 4 out of 5. I mean, he's just one of those guys that have all of the physical tools, all the measurables. And it's funny because his ceiling and his floor rating have the biggest disparity in this draft class, in my opinion. But we'll get to the floor later. But with his size and athleticism that you can't teach, his ceiling is obviously very high. The likelihood of him reaching that ceiling is slim to none. But I'd be lying if I said it was impossible. He has things that can't be taught or learned or coached up with his just natural God-given ability. But then his floor rating's a 0 out of 5 because if he doesn't actually learn how to play the QB position with big mental progress and major mechanic cleanup, he could end up not even being good enough to keep on the team as a backup. Day one, he is not ready to even touch the field, so his floor rating is literally like a 0. My 2020 projection, more than likely on the practice squad until he makes big strides in various areas that I've previously mentioned. Haskins is the future of the franchise. Kyle Allen is the high floor, low ceiling, dependable backup quarterback who already knows Scott Turner's offense. And then there's Steven Montez, who will be the developmental project who probably takes a couple of years or more to even get good enough to touch an NFL field with a straight face. But I definitely understand bringing in somebody like this as an undrafted free agent. I think it's smart. If he reaches his potential, he can be a top half of the league level quarterback talent. If he doesn't, you didn't even waste a draft pick on him. Plus, you also need a quarterback to throw out there in those preseason games when the super backups out there playing their hearts out to make their teams, and you don't want your top 2 quarterbacks to get hurt. So, smart pickup. Then you have Isaiah Wright, my second favorite undrafted free agent, only after Thaddeus Moss. Strengths, he's basically a baby Antonio Gibson talent-wise. Definitely not size-wise, of course, because he's supposedly like 2 inches taller. But very similar skill set as far as strengths and weaknesses go. First of all, how he's going to make his biggest impact early on will be his crazy return game skill set. Him and Gibson are our best returners potential-wise day one. Like, obviously, it's not even close. Like the day we drafted them. He's a natural and electric returner. Not only does he have great returning instincts, but somebody his size at 6'2", 220 pounds shouldn't be able to be that quick and agile. This skill set also makes him a great asset in the trick play game as a gadget receiver. You know, jet sweeps, reverses, wildcats, screens, all of that type of stuff. Just like Gibson. Gibson is a better athlete, but that's not fair to compare because Gibson was probably the best offensive athlete in this entire draft class, arguably. But Isaiah Wright is definitely a great athlete in his own right. He's just not Gibson. His yards after catch ability is crazy, of course. He also brings great jump ball ability, which will help him progress as a complete wide receiver so he can have an impact beyond just special teams. His hands are quick as he snatches the ball out the air, which doesn't allow DBs to make a play on the ball, just like Antonio Gandy-Golden does. And he also is a pretty good route runner already. He's not super raw. Now his weaknesses. Production mostly. Production is what scares me the most. He lost a lot of playing time in the second half of this past season, and he only had 10 catches for 81 yards over the course of his final 6 games in his college career. That seems like a big red flag. But other than that, the traits you see in his limited film, he also needs to improve his route running. but it's way better than you would expect from an undrafted free agent or a late round draft pick, especially if somebody with him being that athletic and explosive with the ball in his hands that went that late in the draft. It's crazy that he even went undrafted. It's actually pretty mind-boggling. But another one of his weaknesses so far is that he doesn't have great top speed. He's very agile and quick, but he doesn't burn DBs down the field. It's weird. He's not a deep ball threat that can consistently take the lid off the defense. Also, even though he is a great jump ball specialist and snags passes out of the air, he is not consistent with making catches while there's contact present. With a certain amount of bumping and banging, he's bound to drop the catch. And it's probably because his hands are pretty small, with them barely being over 8 inches. I mean, just to put it in perspective, Jerry Jeudy's hands are more than an inch longer than his. And Jerry Jeudy's not even as tall as Isaiah Wright, which is definitely a concern. Now, his ceiling. His ceiling is definitely a 4 out of 5, because as long as an offensive coordinator, Scott Turner in our case, puts him in situations that favor his skill set, which is get him the ball in non-contested situations like quick routes or in the backfield, and get him out in space, he can be a very deadly offensive asset. And then on top of that, he can definitely improve his already pretty good route running and become another deadly option for Haskins in the passing game, especially with Terry, Steven Sims, Harmon, and AGG constantly commanding the attention of the best DBs on the other teams. He'll be able to consistently eat against the non-number 1 and number 2 DBs. And great route running and the ability to consistently separate is the quickest way for him to become a young QB's best friend while they're still developing in Dwayne Haskins. Allowing them, Dwayne Haskins in particular, to gain a rhythm throughout the game and gain confidence. With route running nuance and creativity that's even better than what he already has, he can definitely be that for Haskins. He also needs to work on his focus drops, but everything he has as a weakness, other than his top line speed, are all coachable and can be improved with time and dedication. That's why his ceiling is a 4 out of 5. He can actually be a really super steal in this draft. I mean, we got him as an undrafted free agent. And if he ends up reaching his potential, people are going to go back and be like, what other teams thinking type of guy. His floor rating, I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5 because day one at the very least, he will be one of our 2 most deadly returners on our team and will immediately make our special teams more special. I'm worried about why Temple decided to utilize him less as a receiver the second half of last season, but we'll see. Maybe they were just tripping. I don't know. But at the very least, which is why I gave him a 2.5 out of 5, at the very least, he will be a deadly returner for us in the return game. And then his 2020 projection, he'll more than likely make this roster. First of all, because Cody Latimer isn't in the running anymore. Even though the reason why Cody Latimer did what he did, I feel him. I can't even knock him after finding out more details. But nevertheless, Cody Latimer getting in trouble makes it easier for Wright to make the roster. But also, he will be an exciting return game specialist who always has a chance to juke a few people out and give us great field position any given punt or kickoff. And then his potential as a receiver with a route running skill set that isn't as raw as you would expect out of an undrafted free agent, Scott Turner and Nate Kaxer, our special teams coordinator, will probably fall in love with this guy. I definitely expect him to make the roster some way, somehow. Next up, wide receiver Jonathan Johnson. Strengths, he's like a slot receiver that's pretty shifty and fast. He ran a 4.40 40 time, which isn't Terry McLaurin type of fast, but it's still fast. And then his weaknesses, a lot. I mean, raw talent, underdeveloped route running and catching ability, just a very raw prospect. And he also took a big step backwards in production in 2019 from his 2018 season. His 2018 season, he showed some promise and looked like he might be something in 2019. And in 2019, I don't know what happened, but he only caught 29 passes for 294 yards and no touchdowns, which is pretty alarming. And he also has an injury history, which scares me the most. So his ceiling rating, with his natural speed and shiftiness, I'm going to give him a 3 out of 5. If he somehow finds a way to make a jump in development, in which he never made in any of his years in Missouri, really, then he can actually be pretty good. You can't teach speed, and if the Redskins could turn this raw pile of clay and mold him into a receiver with much better technique, much better route running, much better hands, then he can be a deadly asset in Scott Turner's offense. It just doesn't sound like it. And then his floor, I gave it a 0.5 out of 5. I mean, if he stays as raw as he currently is, he won't even be good enough to throw on the field. He won't be a dependable target for Haskins, who can get open consistently. And he's fast, but he's not fast enough to make up for how raw he is. I mean, he's not that level of speed. He isn't even as fast as Terry McLaurin or Antonio Gibson, and definitely not as fast as Bryce Love. So he's going to have to really get to work to even have a serious use on this team. And then his 2020 projection, even though Antonio Gibson can double as a slot receiver, the only real pure slot receiver we have on this team that's primed to break out is Steven Sims. And I think both Jonathan Johnson and Trey Quinn on the outside looking in. I mean, they both have uphill battles to even make this roster. But they are also competing against each other to prove that the Redskins even need to add another short, speedy, pure slot receiver. I doubt either of them will make it in with Terry McLaurin, Steven Sims, Kelvin Harmon, AGG already taking up 4 spots. And then they're lucky that Antonio Gibson will count as a running back roster-wise. But then there's also guys with all kinds of potential with very high ceilings like Cam Sims, Emmanuel Hall, and also Isaiah Wright, who I just spoke about, who has a great chance to make the roster just off of his immediate special teams impact already. So it's a little dark for both Jonathan Johnson and Trey Quinn, to be honest, but we'll see. But I just doubt that either of them make the roster at this point. And then the last player, David Bada, didn't come from the NCAAF like the rest of these guys, but, you know, still counts. But he worked out in front of NFL teams in March as a member of the NFL's International Players Program. But I personally, no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't find any real film on him. There's all kinds of workouts everywhere, but if any of y'all gotta connect somehow, please let me know, because I would love to break him down and review his film and tell y'all his weaknesses and strengths, because I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all are wondering, but I personally, within my means, cannot acquire any film on this guy. Anything that's like good enough for me to really judge who he is. But at the end of the day, I give this draft class grade an A-. Some of those undrafted free agents definitely helped boost the grade, and you can tell that through free agency, Ron Rivera and Kyle Smith wanted speed and versatility and athleticism, and they came into this draft and did the same thing with their draft picks and the undrafted free agents. So just off of the fact that they came and accomplished what they wanted, they got a lot of high potential guys, a lot of gems. I mean, like I said, Pro Football Focus love Keith Ismael. Even though I'm not even that high on him, they graded him the best pass blocking offensive lineman in all of 2019. I mean, you have Chase Young, who was the best player available in the draft. You have Antonio Gibson, who potentially can be the best offensive weapon in this entire draft. And like I said, that includes all of the running backs like DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor, all of the wide receivers, and Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb, all of those guys. Antonio Gibson has the potential to be the best skill position player in this draft. And then he went to the team that literally made Christian McCaffrey. So the sky's the limit for him. Saahdiq Charles has Pro Bowl level talent. I expect him to reach it and be our left tackle of the future for many years to come. Antonio Gandy-Golden is going to be that guy that finally takes some attention off Terry McLaurin. And AGG and Steven Sims are going to make Terry McLaurin almost not double teamable, which is just not fair for DBs. And then you have Khaleke Hudson and Kamren Curl, who are very versatile guys. I mean, as versatile as it gets on defense. I'm excited about them. James Smith-Williams, if it wasn't for injuries, probably has top 3 round talent. But, you know, people didn't really get much film on him, so they don't trust him. But off of the film, his potential is ridiculous. And we don't even need more defensive linemen, but it's just like, why not? With somebody that talented, he's available in the 7th round, you got to take him. I mean, he literally could have had first round talent if he just stayed healthy enough to show it. And then the undrafted free agents. Come on now. How did we get Thaddeus Moss and Isaiah Wright as the undrafted free agents? I mean, those were huge wins. So I had to give this draft an A-. I was leaning towards an A, and I really do want to give it an A, but that would be me giving them an A just off of pure potential. I mean, this draft has A+ potential, but I don't want to give them too many points for potential. We got to go and see. So this draft, when we look back a year or two from now, can easily be an A+, easily, without a doubt. But as of today, I don't want to bank on all of the potential that we have in these guys. Some of these guys' potentials, you can kind of bet on it working out. But a lot of these guys' potentials are super crapshoots, rolling the dice. We'll see if our coaching staff can get it out of them. We'll see if they're dedicated to put in the work to reach their potential. But there's a lot of potential there. But again, I'm not going to bank on everybody's potential, which is why I'm giving this draft class an A-, which is being led by Chase Young, who was the best player in the draft. So I couldn't go below that. Also, what would have factored into the Redskins possibly getting an A+ was having a 2nd round draft pick. But you technically have to count the second round draft pick we didn't have as half of Montez Sweat. If Montez Sweat goes and super balls out this next year and for the rest of his career like I'm expecting him to, then you can kind of count this towards this rookie class because we gave up our second round draft pick from this class to get him. But it is disappointing to not have a second round draft pick with so much talent that was available in the second round. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, we could have gotten Jeremy Chin then. There was still a lot of good receivers. There were a lot of great DBs, a lot of good offensive linemen. You know what I'm saying? So I had to deduct points from that. But like I said, after you take Chase Young, the best player in the draft, potentially the best edge rusher to ever do it in NFL history type of thing, and then you have the all-time sack leader in NFL history, Bruce Smith, wanting to come help you because he sees the greatness in you to make you a great player, a future Hall of Famer, then you're doing something right. So just off of that, I couldn't go lower than A-. I mean, we could have just drafted straight punters for the rest of this draft. It would have been hard for me to go lower than A-. I mean, I'm kidding, but you get what I'm basically saying. I mean, like, there's so much potential in this draft class, and I don't want to give too many points for potential, but Chase Young alone carries this draft class to an A- in my opinion. I mean, he's just too great. His potential impact is going to be ridiculous. He plays the second most important position in football, which is probably the second most important position in all of sports. I mean, it literally might be quarterback easily, most important position in all of sports. And then edge rusher is competing with pitcher in baseball, maybe goalie in the various sports that have goalie. I mean, edge rusher is literally up there in value of importance. And to get possibly the best one to come out of the draft in who knows how many years is just a win-win in any way. I mean, the highest ceiling and the highest floor in the draft. I mean, this literally can't miss God tier level prospect. Everybody loves him. Had to give the draft class at least an A- just off of Chase Young. But I also love a lot of these guys, especially after I broke them down and really did film sessions on them. When I look at their strengths, weaknesses, ceilings, and floors, these are a lot of great sleeper picks. I mean, even the undrafted free agents. With Thaddeus Moss, I was surprised to make it out the 5th round. I mean, it's just crazy. And a lot of these guys are going to bring the heat to the training camp battles that we have coming. So this is going to be really entertaining. Training camp is going to be crazy, and I love it. This rookie class is about to put the pressure on everybody else. The 2019 rookie class, the 2018 rookie class, the super veterans. This 2020 rookie class is going to put pressure on all of them to perform better and outperform them so they can keep their spots. This 2020 rookie class is definitely on the necks of all of those veterans on our team, and I love it. But that's the end of this video. I'm so glad I finally got it to y'all. I don't know how long this lasted. I've been talking for hours. I'll see how long it is once I edit it and break it down. I'm sorry for being pink when I lean back. I'm really glad. I'm so relieved. Huge weight off my shoulders to finally get this to y'all. Now I'm moving on to the Air Coryell offense and other videos I need to get to y'all. So please like the video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Please subscribe if you haven't. I know I'm late with the draft grade review and analysis, but I didn't want to just go out there and talk based off of what other people said, like ESPN journalists, NFL Network analysts, Bleacher Report, draft guys, all of that type of stuff. I wanted to make sure I literally watched film on all of these guys and gave my opinion on all of these guys, strength, weaknesses, ceiling, floors, 2020 projections. That's why it took me so long, so I'm sorry, but I'm always going to give y'all 100% authentic, 100% from me, and sometimes greatness just takes time. I'm sorry. So again, I appreciate the support. Please subscribe if you haven't. I'm coming out with film sessions for all of these guys, also individual ones with 20 to 30 minutes showing y'all literally what I talked about in this video for each guy. Like literally breaking it down, showing you on film so you can see it for yourself. So make sure you definitely subscribe for that. I appreciate the support. I'll catch y'all later. I'm going straight to sleep as soon as I'm done editing this video. I am out.